Hello, and welcome to the Shea Honey podcast, Inspiring Creative Career Change. Today, I'm so happy to welcome my guest, Sophie Roberts, onto the Shea Honey podcast. Sophie is somebody that I've followed on social media for the last decade or so. And so I was thrilled when she agreed to come on this podcast and talk to me about her career so far. Sophie, welcome to Shea Honey. Can we begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here and talk with you today. So a little bit about myself. Everything that I do is about challenging yourself, and my biggest passion is that we all have this ability to be this brave, confident, resilient version of ourselves, but that standing in the way of that are our fears and limiting beliefs and conditionings that we've picked up from the past. And on the other side of the fears and the limiting beliefs is the person that we really want to be and the way we really want to live our lives. And we have to really go out there and fight for that person and that life. So for me, when we challenge ourselves, we get the opportunity to kind of go through that transformational period, and you come out the other side with a different set of beliefs about yourself, a different mindset, and those then change into, how you talk about yourself, what you put yourself forward for, up leveling your confidence, up leveling your self-trust. And from there, you can create, a totally different life from the one that you were living before. So my business is called Challenge Sophie, and that's what I'm known for on social media. And it is a journey that started back in 2008 when I was in my first job out of university. I was doing sales for a London tech startup,
Yeah.
and I decided I needed to challenge myself as a way to find the answers to these big burning questions that I had about myself and life, and really to find out who I was, what I was capable of, and what my limits were, what my purpose was, all these kind of big questions. And I guess I felt that when you're going through education and you're being, you're kind of being prepared for adult life, that there's this idea that your job is the place that you're going to get the answers to all those questions,
Yeah.
and that you're the place that you're going to get this fulfillment. And, it's going to be your purpose, and it's going to create your identity and all these kind of things. But actually, I found that the truth was not that. And the job was, oh, okay, well, you don't like it. Well, so does loads of other people don't like their jobs, but you just get on with it. And
Mm,
they're all like, oh, okay, well, you see yourself doing all these other things. You want to progress in your life. You want to, you see yourself having so much more potential than what you're currently able to do. But, you've got to play by the game, you've got to play by the rules, you've got to work your way up there, all these kind of
mm.
things. And so the decision to challenge myself was born from, okay, well, I understand now how the corporate world works, and I'm going to play that game. I'll play by those rules, but at the same time, I'm going to take my life into my own hands and see what else there is out for me, what else there is for me outside of this 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, amazing. And when and how did you, because like you obviously then got to the point where you left the 9 to 5 job, I think I'm right in saying. And so how did you kind of manage that balance between or know that it was the right time to do that? And how did you approach that?
Yeah, I think everyone sort of sometimes thinks there's this big kind of epiphany moment that you just decide, but actually it always is, a series of smaller things leading up to that. So taking you back a little bit, before
Yeah.
I quit my job, I was basically working in the world of tech startups and having a phenomenal time being part of the growth team of what was at the time the UK's fastest growing tech startup.
Mm.
I was managing a team of 20 to 30 people. I absolutely loved managing. I loved leading. I built the company culture at this business, which has now turned into one of the best companies in the UK to work for. And, I had loads of friends there. We would in a very fast-paced, high growth environment that was really exciting. And at the same time, throughout my career, I'd been doing all of these different challenges. So the two were kind of meeting in the middle, and they were creating this domino effect of, on my weekends and my evenings I'd go and do these, sorry, weekends and holidays, I'd go and do these challenges. And each time I was challenging myself in the adventure space and the outdoors, I was building more confidence and I was gearing myself up to be able to do bigger, longer, harder, challenges. But then what was happening to me, that transition and that sort of transformation and in my mindset, I was then bringing that back into the workplace and asking for more and, you
Mm.
know, saying, being part of this really high growth environment, and having so much hunger and drive and motivation for it. So it was really a very unique time. And it was like a domino effect, everything was fueling the other thing. And so, the people that I worked with, like they absolutely loved that. They just lapped it up. Like,
Yeah.
great, we've got someone here who's like super hungry, super driven,
Yeah.
he's got loads of energy to make this happen. But it got to the point where, I was sort of, I was a couple of years into that, and at the point that I did quit my job, I was 27. And I had share options in the business, and it was sort of like, okay, well, you stay for another couple of years, you'll get the payout, all this kind of stuff. But I really needed something to get my teeth stuck into. And the message that I was having back from them was like, no, just stay in your zone, stay doing what you're doing, just keep tapping it out.
Mm.
And I always knew that this wasn't the path for me. I never, even when I was younger, and I never saw myself doing, 9 to 5, but I got into
Yeah.
it for a variety of reasons and it ticked loads of boxes for me. Um, but I guess it just built up to this point of like, okay, well, I do believe there's so much more out there for me. And I could see the world, taking off. Like it was really just the start of social media, and people were running businesses from anywhere in the world. Like there wasn't the whole digital nomad scene, but people were doing that. They were making these businesses happen. And I was, I had to be in this office to do my job, to run my team. And, we were like underneath this railway arch, no natural light coming in. And I just thought, this is so restrictive. And there's a whole world out there. And basically, after kind of a multiple of different attempts to try and create something for me to really aim for, and feeling like the door was being closed in my face each time, um, it just it was just making me increasingly unhappy.
Mm.
And I had to have a really hard look at that and just say, well, maybe this is the time for me to take myself off and see what else is out there for me.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with somebody that it was sort of being a bit of a mentor to me at the time. And this one night he said to me, Sophie, a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what a ship was built for. Go
Yeah.
sailing. And that just completely fired me up. And I just thought, I'm making this decision to stay because it's safe and it's known and it's secure, and we're going to sell the business and we're going to make loads of money. Like that was inevitable coming up in the next few years. And I could look into my future and I could see exactly what my future, in and out, but what it would look like. I was like, I'll I'll
Mm.
I'll still be having the same conversations on the phone. I'll be with the same people. I'll be having adventures and I'll be earning money and I'll be doing all these things, but it very much felt to me like if you make this decision now to choose money and security over actually putting yourself out into the world and seeing who you could be and what you could really create with your life, like that will become part of me. And I will always be that, I will always continue to kind of make those decisions.
Yeah.
Or you can put yourself out into the world, into the complete and utter unknown, and just go for it. And once I started to let myself think about what I would do if I did quit my job, it just completely and utterly fired me up, and there was really no turning back. Um, so yeah, the decision was actually made quite quickly.
Yeah.
Then um, and then I handed my notice, and I was out of there within a matter of weeks,
Yeah.
because it was just before Christmas, the way that dates aligned and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just kind of like looking what am I going to do in my life now?
Yeah. And can you maybe just talk about what some of the sorts of challenges that you were doing whilst you were still working? Because perhaps people listening might not know um, exactly what kinds of things you're talking about in terms of the challenges you were pushing yourself to do at the weekends and in holidays. But maybe just give us an example of something that you did, because that will set the scene for then what you came on to do a bit later.
100%. So the first ever challenge was an adventure race in the jungle of Borneo,
Yeah.
um, because I don't do things by halves. So I went off to Borneo with 40 people I'd never met, and we spent 10 days adventure racing, doing all kinds of incredible things, from running through the jungle, mountain biking, kayaking, whitewater rafting. We made camps in the middle of the jungle. Well, we actually got helicoptered into the jungle one night, and then we like made our own camps with
Wow.
a machete and hammocks, and then the race culminated with climbing Mount Kinabalu, which is the highest mountain in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And then we came back down and we all had this huge party at a five-star hotel on the beach. And I was just like, and this was like my first holiday that I'd kind of saved for, and my first proper holiday with annual leave, which I actually thought was like the coolest thing ever, that you get paid for holiday. It's like, when you were a student and then you're
Yeah.
like, someone's actually paying me whilst I'm on holiday. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go and do something really cool with this.
Yeah.
Um, And in the process of training for this challenge, I started doing military boot camps in London. I got a bike. I started commuting to work.
Yeah.
So I just started. I was just like, gosh, before then I was spending so much time in the pub after work, and then this gave me like a real opportunity to just start to change all of my habits and get
Yeah.
fit. And I just absolutely loved it. Like I was there, rain, snow, wind, it didn't matter. I was there. I was doing the burpees, I was doing the press ups, I was piggybacking people around Hyde Park at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then going to work with like mud in my hair. I just didn't care. I was having so much fun.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, wow, this is a huge transformation for you. Um, so needless to say, the Kinabalu challenge completely changed my life. And it was a light bulb moment for me of like, this is how I'm going to become the person that I want to become. This is where I'm going to build this strength, this resilience, this confidence, this bravery, this ability to go and set myself goals. And actually, for the first time in my life, I realized like no one is going to stand in the way of making me happen, making it happen,
Mm.
but also no one's going to make it happen for me either.
Yeah.
Whereas, like,
Yeah.
in contrast to the corporate environment, I couldn't just dream the biggest thing that I possibly wanted to do and go make it happen, because they're like, oh, yeah, well, maybe in like 4 to 5 years, you could be managing a team.
Mm.
And whereas in the mountains, there's no limits. And you can say, oh, I want to go climb Mont Blanc. And then you just figure out a way to go and make it happen.
Yeah.
So the Borneo Challenge turned into, I also, as training for that, I did the Three Peaks Challenge in the UK.
I think that's where I first came across your work, actually, because I think you wrote an article in a magazine, a kind of, I don't know what magazine, a cycling magazine, or an outdoors magazine. I can't remember, but I read it. Was it the one that you did with
I was Sean.
Sean? Yeah. I
On
think that's
Twitter.
where I first came across you randomly. And
I love
I
that.
read that article and I found that really inspiring. And I think then I like looked you up on Twitter, I think it was at the time, and kind of followed you ever since. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's definitely, I think, where I first came across your work.
I love that. And yeah, so then I got into triathlon, and then I really loved the cycling part of triathlon. So I
Mm.
was like, oh, what could I do on my bike? And my grandmother lived in Paris. So I was like, oh, I know, let's cycle from London to Paris in 24 hours. And
Wow.
all this stuff, I was just like, oh, that's an awesome idea. Let's go and do it. And
Yeah.
it didn't matter to me whether I had the kit or, none of my friends were interested in this. They were all just busy going to the pub and doing their jobs.
Yeah.
But, I was like early 20s at this time. Um, but then, but I just didn't care. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just find some random people who want to cycle to Paris with me. And, didn't matter that I'd only ever cycled 40 miles once.
Yeah.
Didn't matter that I didn't know how to change a puncture. Like, none of this stuff mattered to me. I was like, it's fine. Didn't matter that I didn't have kit. Fine, get some kit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's change a puncture. But what I had, you know, what I had in spades was a huge amount of drive and motivation. And, and what I've learned throughout all of my challenges is that is incredibly powerful. And, the power of our mind and our motivation and our drive when we really want to go and do something, we can overcome absolutely anything.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so those are kind of, I mean, I was also doing like adventure racing in the UK. I then massively fell in love with the idea of, I think I'd always been drawn to mountains. And I decided I wanted to climb Mont Blanc.
Yeah.
Um, so I basically got to work on that plan, signed up for a course, went again, had no idea what I was doing, like, but people just didn't care. They were really willing to take me underneath their wing because I never pretended that I did know what I was doing. I did have
Yes.
I had all the idea. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. But when I turned up to these things, they were like, wow, who's this person? Because she's just got so much drive and motivation and energy to go and make this happen.
Yeah.
So they were really willing to like take me underneath their wing. So Mont Blanc sparked a whole passion for mountaineering, and I was going ice climbing in Scotland in my February holidays and winters and stuff like that. What else was I doing? Yeah, that's probably it. Like
Yeah.
just
Did you
yeah.
find that the people, because it strikes me that perhaps each time you put yourself in a new challenge situation, that you would obviously be surrounded by other people that were also wanting to do similar things. And did that, was that enthusiasm of others quite infectious? And I suppose, did that also lead to the next thing kind of quite organically through meeting people?
That's a really good question. And now I'm thinking about it, I don't really think it did. I think that it was just I was just like, right, this is what I want to do, and I would put myself in different situations all the time. Whether it's triathlon, like when I signed up for an Ironman, for example, I was like, oh, I should probably do some proper training. So I joined the my local triathlon club. I think I went to one of their training sessions and then I just signed up for their training camp in Spain. And I remember getting to the airport and they were like, who are you? Like we've never seen you before. You haven't been to any of the training sessions, and now you're just coming on our camp, and I just didn't care. Like, and they again the same thing, all the people there, they had like really expensive bikes, and my bike was really just an average bike. And they were kind of like, this is such a rogue bike, this is such a rogue thing to do. But again, like the same thing happened where a couple of days into the training camp, I was up there riding with the strongest guys, and you know, it just didn't really, it doesn't even matter what your bike is or whether it's
Yeah.
making noises. And they were just like this, they thought that they all thought that I'd rented it, because they were like, no one would bring a bike like that to out to Spain. Um, I think it is amazing meeting people. And I would say the biggest thing for me was that I was really like a sponge, and I was learning so much along the way, and I was learning about nutrition and training. And and I loved, I definitely loved meeting people, but I really felt very much that I was driving all of that forward. I wasn't like meeting someone and then they say, oh, come and do this with me. I was just like going and doing something complete, whatever
Yeah.
it inspired me next.
Yeah, that's amazing. You obviously just had such drive and such determination of wanting to keep doing things that inspired you, that yeah, it didn't really matter what was going on around you. You were just going to do it anyway, which is hugely inspirational, I think. What have been some of the challenges? So I don't mean challenges in the sense of you doing your challenges, but what have been some of the maybe more difficult aspects of moving your life into this direction, and particularly after you quit your 9 to 5 job? What have been some of the things that you've perhaps found more difficult to manage?
Okay, so after I quit my 9 to 5 job, the feeling was like, when you go to like the leisure centre and you go down one of these water slides, and everyone at the top, everyone's like really excited, and then you go down this water slide and it's kind of terrifying and exciting and all of the things. And then at the end, you get shot out into this deep pool of water. And for a moment, you think like you're going to die and you can't swim and you don't know which way is the surface and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's basically how I felt in the process of quitting my job. It was
Okay.
like, way, so exciting, made this big decision, gonna go on the slide. Da, 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 da. Da. Everyone was like, great, what are you gonna do? Da, 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 da. And then it was like the reality was I was shot out into this plunge pool, which was the beginning of January. And I didn't really know which way was up or down or what to do. And I very much felt like I was drowning. Um, Instantly, I felt very overwhelmed by the weight of the decision that I'd
Mm,
made. I felt very, very lost without any structure. It's like there are just so many things that a 9 to 5 gives you that you don't realize the impact of them until it's gone. It's like, you know, it's the structure, it's the identity piece, it's all the things
yeah.
like knowing that you're doing a job and you're good at it and you're going to get paid, that
Yeah.
whole exchange of value. Um,
And I guess
it,
just having a routine as well
yeah,
of, yeah,
exactly.
having to get
The
up at a certain
routine,
time and be somewhere every day. Yeah, that routine is what humans in lots of respects kind of crave and need within reason, I guess.
100%, like we're all creatures of habit.
Mm,
And so without that, it was like all of that stripped away. And then I had some money saved up. Um, but you start to burn through that money
yeah,
incredibly quickly when you're not earning it each month to pay your monthly salary sorry, your monthly rent in London.
yeah,
So, yeah, originally in the beginning it was really daunting and it was really scary. And I remember actually for the first time in my life, I didn't even want to get out of bed. I think I was like,
right.
I actually just, it completely took away all my motivation. And my partner at the time was so supportive. And he was running his own business and he was part of this really cool co-working space in East London. I mean, again, it was like back when, it didn't really happen. They were so rare, those kind of things. And it was called Bathtub to Boardroom. It was really cool. They literally had a bathtub in it and they had a puppy, palm trees, and it was in this beautiful church. And he said to me, why don't you get a desk here? uh, for a month and come do some work with me on my business and then we can go to work together. And he was just like, you've got to get up, you've got to just put one foot in front of the
Yeah,
next, you've got to make this happen. And so yeah, so I started to do that. And I remember I sat down on the first day and I think I wrote a blog on my blog. And I was like, here I am, at the helm of my life,
yeah,
driving it forward, completely in control now. And I just literally took out a blank piece of paper and some coloring pens and I just started mind mapping. And I was like, this is what's really amazing is when you get to pull together all the different threads of your life and all the different passions that you have. And, I'd been really invested in youth development. I was so passionate and interested in using the outdoors to help people, go through difficult times in their lives and come out the other side. I'd had this incredible experience building startups. I was very, very good at, business development and stuff like that. And then I had obviously just had this huge burning desire to go out and champion this message of challenging ourselves and what can happen if we do that. And so I just started mind mapping them all and I started to kind of bring them together. And I also was like, right, I need to earn money. And so I believe that anybody, once you've established yourself in a career and you've got a certain amount of experience, most of us can do that freelance, on a kind of consulting freelance basis if we
yeah,
want to. And it's not the same. Like obviously, I'd gone from managing a team of 30 people at the UK's fastest growing tech startup to then doing, business development. It was the actual job that I'd done years before. But I didn't care. I was like, okay, this definitely feels in most ways like I'm going backwards. But if I have to go backwards in order to go sideways and take a huge leap forward, then that's what I do. And I think that's like a thing that a lot of people are afraid of doing. They don't want to earn less money. They don't want to take any steps backwards, basically. And sometimes in life, you really do have to do that. So so I just kind of started and I started doing consulting work for startups. And that was, enough for like a couple of days a week. And that gave me the opportunity to earn some money, have that structure, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time build Challenge Sophie, even though I didn't know what Challenge Sophie was going to become. But actually I was just like, this feels incredible to me and really aligned, and I'm just gonna see what it's gonna become.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how taking that step to building Challenge Sophie has allowed maybe your career and your lifestyle um, to be more creative? I wonder if you feel that that is the case, and if so, how that sort of manifested itself.
I love that question. I absolutely feel it's the case. And I remember, a lot of jobs that we do, we do it, a huge part of it on autopilot. And, we end up kind of having the same sort of speaking the same lingo and having the same conversations and stuff like that. And I remember thinking like I really want to use my brain and I really want to, be more creative. And
Yeah,
my creative outlets are writing, um, their photography, um, and I actually really love creating like, I absolutely love like creating brands and projects and stuff like that. Like when I created Trailblazers, which is my youth empowerment program to build confidence and courage in teenage girls that are struggling with mental health issues. I loved every part of it. I love like coming up with the name and the mission statement and the branding and the logo and like, and then you put something out into the world that actually didn't exist before, and it integrates with you people in the world and they love it and it means something to them and it helps them with their own identity and it becomes
yeah,
their identity, and it's just a really beautiful thing. So I would say that 100% a huge part of my work is massively being creative, and all of like the content side of things, when I'm preparing for keynote talks that I'm giving, when especially when I make films.
yeah.
I've had the opportunity to make films with all kinds of brands. I recently just did one with Morgan Cars in Scotland. And it's like it's such an incredible experience because it's like they've got the car and they've got their brand and their kind of values, but they came to me because they were like, so many people who drive our cars, they're very protective of them and they drive them, just down to the pub or whatever on a Sunday. But they were like, we want to show that this is a vehicle for adventure. And we want to
Yeah,
inspire our community to go on adventures, to go and live their lives and not wait, and then life passes you by and all this kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
So they were like, we want to go and do this in Scotland with you. And I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. So it's almost like you're given this blank canvas between like me and the car and Scotland. And then, also the filmmaker as well. And just how that all comes about and, this beautiful canvas of Scotland, which is just the most incredible place on the planet for me. Um, it's just amazing. And I feel so grateful. And then you create this piece of content, like this beautiful film we created. I think it's like 5 minutes long. And the messages I received from people who watched it, like it really touched them and resonated with them. And I think it's something that I feel so grateful to be able to do. And I think it is really amazing to be able to create in that kind of way.
yeah. And actually, something that's just struck me as you've been saying all of that is I wonder if, and this is perhaps the case for all of us, that when you're creating something for another organization, a company you work for in your 9 to 5 job or something similar, perhaps that creativity doesn't feel quite so powerful as to when it's compared with creating something for yourself, which is like for you, your own brand. So, doing all that planning, but you're planning stuff that means something personal to you as well as it being part of your work. And perhaps that allows the creativity to flow more. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. I really resonate with that because it's like it comes from you. It's an
Mm,
expression of you. And that's the case where it's like really you're going, well, this is I can only speak for myself, but I feel like I I take what's in my heart and in my mind and, in like the experiences that have made me who I am, and I use those to then create a story that will resonate with people.
Yeah. And I think it means so much more to people when it really does come from the heart and you believe in it. I think that comes through, and it certainly comes through to me and everything that I've seen that you've done. um but I think in general, that's the way as humans we connect with other people. If we really believe in something that somebody is presenting to us, or something that somebody else is doing, um that belief and that creativity, I think, really just flows through in a different way to when we're working for other people, I guess. um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. What advice do you have for anyone listening who's considering either making a big career change or just a big kind of change in their life in some way? Do you have any pieces of wisdom or advice that you would like to share?
I would say that, my message isn't quit your job and go for your dreams. It's a very personal decision and it needs to be, obviously thought out on multiple different levels. Um, and it's interesting that thing that you've just said about creativity, because when you're worried about money, you do not care about creativity. You're like, I'm going to get a job in McDonald's because I need to earn some money. Like it threatens you at your very core, that survival feeling. So, it's all well and good being like, oh yeah, I'll get to be more creative and stuff like that. But when you're building something from scratch, like, it is hard and it really takes a lot of time. Um, I feel like for me, I always had the mindset of, and it's interesting because I think actually, no, I remember getting paid to write about one of my adventures, one of my cycling London to Paris in 24 hours adventures for a magazine. And I got paid £50 for it. And I think that was the first
Yeah.
time, this was when I was still in my job, but it was the first time I got paid outside of my job for doing something that I was in the sort of challenge Sophie space. And I remember thinking like that's proof of concept. And £50 can turn into 500, can turn to 5,000. Like, do you know what I mean? I mean, you've got that mindset of like but you have to start small and you have to build and you have to be prepared, I think, to take, like I said, to be able to go backwards in order to go
Yes.
and almost like a game of snakes and ladders. Like you might feel like you've been sent back to square one, but then being at that square one enables you to go sideways, and then you can go like leaps and frogs forward because you're on a completely different path. Um, I think the other thing that was really scary for me was like I'd invested so much time and energy into building my career in the world of startups.
Yes.
And I was so worried, like, oh, is all this going to go to waste if I just jump ship and go and do something different? And so, really trusting that everything that you've ever put time and energy into will always be valuable. And it will actually, like, the paths always do converge in the end. And even though you
Yeah.
think, oh, well, how's that thing that I spent a couple of years getting into, whether it's a hobby or a sport or anything that you do, it will always converge in the end when you're doing your own thing.
Yes.
Um, and I think, I think that also the other thing is a lot of people wait for the perfect opportunity and they'll say, it's like waiting for this light bulb moment or waiting for, you know, oh, I'd love to move countries, but I'd only do it if or when I got offered a job and it was more money and it was a better, job promotion for me. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way sometimes.
No.
Like we have to put ourselves out there. We have to take these big leaps. And I'm a really big believer that when you make bold moves, the universe responds. And you're not someone who's like, I made a massive commitment to myself. Like I'm going to be a doer, not a talker. So,
Yes.
I'm putting myself in the situation where it was like, I've made this decision. That meant that people responded to me in a very, very different way to if I was like, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my
Yeah.
job. If I was quitting my job, would I potentially be able to talk to you about how we could work together or opportunities? Like when I was there and I made that decision, I was in those shoes, that moved things around me in a very, very different way.
Well, and I think also people are sometimes a little taken aback by that attitude to things, but they're also they have confidence in you when you have confidence in yourself about something, don't they? And so it breeds its own form of confidence, just being quite decisive about that. I can totally see how that happens.
100%.
Yeah. And your I thought I have to get this into here in here somehow, but your kind of motto, if you like, is one life, live it. Can you just mention a little bit about what that means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That that came to me when I was 18. I was traveling, living in Mexico, and I think that I'd always just been so enthralled ever since I was a child about the concept of life. And I just always been so excited to kind of like go out and make make it mine, really. Like once you get through all of the education and all the stuff that you have to do, I was just like, oh wow, like there's this huge wide world out there, and there's so many things that we could be and so many things that we can do. And I never really, saw myself just kind of like following a normal path. Um, and I think but a few things happened to me when I was younger, and especially around that time. And when I was 18, I was in Mexico. My mum got diagnosed with cancer.
Oh gosh.
And it just it just made me think like we just have no idea what's around the corner.
Yeah.
And we really owe it to ourselves and to life in general to go and live it as much as possible. Um and just not wanting to be held back by fears or limiting beliefs, or yeah, just really just that feeling of like being galvanized and just taking your life into your own hands and going with it, and having all of the experiences and all of the fun and all of the adventures and all the travels, obviously within realms of what each of us is able to do.
Yeah.
But I think for so many of us, like we do have so much opportunity, but we wait, we wait for someone to come and do it with us. We
Yeah.
wait for permission from other people. That's a huge thing I hear when I'm working with the girls in Trailblazers. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, but how did you do this when other people didn't, agree, or you
Yeah.
know, didn't give you permission?" I didn't need validation from other
No.
people for what I want to do or who I want to be, we're never going to get everyone to agree with us and think it's a great idea. We have to trust our own intuition
Yeah.
and our own instincts. Um, and so yeah, so for me, one life live it is like literally we do have this one life and we have no idea when it's ever going to be taken away from us.
Yeah.
And I want to squeeze out every last drop of living in that life.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I think that's a great motto to end our chat on. Sophie, thank you. I've so enjoyed chatting to you today, and I know that I'll be excited to kind of keep following your challenges on Instagram and on your blog. Can you just let us know where we can read more about your work?
100%. So it's very easy. I'm at Challenge Sophie on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and my website is challengesophie.com. Um, there's, I would also say like, when you do kind of quit your job and do your own thing, then you're constantly sort of developing new strings to your bow. And over the last couple of years, alongside like running Trailblazers and all the work I do as an adventure athlete, working with different brands and stuff like that. Um, and I also I'm a personal trainer and a mindset coach. And I think it's just for me, it's like taking all of the experiences that I've had, all of the tools that I've developed, and putting them into programs and opportunities for me to support them on their own journey in life is just a magical. So yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch and ask any questions, or talk to me about any areas of my work, or want any support on their journey, then I'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so very much. It's been great to talk to you today.
So welcome. Thanks so much, Hannah.
That was Sophie Roberts talking to Hannah Ash on the Shea Honey podcast. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be sharing the 13th and final episode in this series of inspiring creative career change. Subscribe to my Substack, shayhoney.substack.com, to find out who my final podcast guest will be. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join me again next time.